The discussion is Purim and its connection to two other Jewish holidays, which is pretty unusual because those holidays obviously predate Purim, because apart from Hanukkah, all the Jewish holidays occur before Purim actually occurred. And the last holiday you would have thought is connected to Purim is the one we're going to look at today, which is Yom Kippur. We're going to see that the Vilna Gaon, the genius from Vilna, the Gra, and the Zohar, which is probably where he gets it from, the Kabbalah, say that you can actually see the word Purim in Yom Kippur. Yom means day. Ka as a prefix means like. Purim. A day like Purim. If you say something is like something else, you're saying not as good. It's like it, but it's not the original. You know what I'm saying? We want Coke. The other stuff just ain't gonna do it, you know? Purim's the real deal. How do these 2 days connect to each other? Let's see. Let's try to figure it out. So first of all, let's look at Rav Tzadok on page 14. We're not going to do all the sources over here. We'll do a couple of them. He says all the festivals we know, all the Jewish holidays eventually are going to be nullified. They won't exist anymore. When is this? When Mashiach comes, when the third temple is rebuilt, no more Jewish. We don't need Passover anymore. It's going to become obsolete. You're not going to need it. It talks about redemption from 1,000 years ago. We have the newest redemption over here. However, you made Purim, but Purim lo yu nivtalen leolam, never going to go away. And there's actually a proof for that in the book of Esther. These days of Purim, lo yavu mitoch Yehudim is never going to leave the Jewish people. Never means ever. V'zichram lo yisov mizaram, it's never going to leave his descendants. Vayta lahem zot lachem l'chol olam, is going to be yours forever. That's referring to Yom Kippur. Okay, so Purim and Yom Kippur are always going to be this long-term plan of Purim and Yom Kippur. Okay, that's what Rav Tzadok brings down. Let's try to understand that, why that should be. What is that connection all about? So, Rav Shimshon Pincus, in his book, quotes the Maharal from Prague. Been to Prague before? I go like once a year to Prague with students. Cool city, very cool, special city. So the Maharal, Rabbi Yehuda, was one of the great rabbis there from a few hundred years ago. And he says like this. The reason is that these days of Purim Yom Kippur will never be nullified, is that both of them, without them, we'd be dead. What is Yom Kippur all about? Wiping away our sins. It may be a challenging day, it may be a difficult day, but it's actually a very, very happy day. Right? The Talmud says that one of the happiest days of the year, because all your sins are being wiped away. All the terrible things you did, the stuff you did by accident, stuff you did on purpose, right? All that stuff, gone. Now, it's a scary experience because you're going to a court of law, if you will, the heavenly tribunal. You're going to look at all your acts. It's like the IRS coming to visit, check your books out. But if everything runs nicely, no taxes to pay this year. Feels good. So spiritually, we're alive because of Yom Kippur. Purim, he says, we're alive because we would have physically been destroyed. So Purim is the physical redemption of the entire Jewish people. One of the few times in Jewish history that the entire Jewish people were going to be wiped out. And Yom Kippur is the spiritual redemption of the Jewish people. Right? No Yom Kippur, our sins would just collect up and just have too much to bear and too much to carry. Yeah? Dan, you with it? Okay. Let's go a bit deeper. So basically, he says, the joy of Purim, Shahainu, Vahainu, Asimcha b'Purim, Faragash Yom Kippur, the happiness of Purim, and the feeling of Yom Kippur. You don't walk around happy Yom Kippur. That's like walking into a court of law, right, and be like, yeah, here I come, I'm going to win. Yeah, you don't get it. That's why you don't sing Hallel. There's no songs of praise on Yom Kippur, because that's like, you can't do that, you know what I'm saying? But you're feeling confident. Both the happiness of Purim and the feeling of Yom Kippur are grounded in the essence of life, right? Your happiness is that you're alive, right? Yom Kippur, you get an extra year of life, although you've had an imperfect past. And Purim, he says, we wouldn't be alive at all had it not been for this day of Purim. Okay, very, very good. Let's look at the next source. Says the Vilna Gaon, the genius of Vilna, the Gra, and he says, when it comes to Jewish holidays, they're divided. Every Jewish holiday is divided up. Chetzi lechem, chetzi lashem, half for you and half for God. That's the way Jewish holidays work. Okay, that's how to describe Jewish holidays. We eat, we enjoy, that's for us, and we spend a little bit of time in the synagogue. Right? We do the Pesach Seder, right? Then we spend time in the synagogue, and then we eat and enjoy. That's Jewish holidays, half for us, half for God. They're divided halfway, down the middle. Shabbat is different, but that's another discussion for another course that we'll be doing, God willing. How Shabbat falls into that realm, we'll see another time. However, they say the Yom Kippur and Purim are actually two sides of a whole. Yom Kippur is all about our relationship to God, and Purim really is all about us. So they're actually two halves of one whole. They complete each other. Yom Kippur completes us spiritually, which is why we fast on Yom Kippur. And Purim, we eat so much and we drink. It's complete opposite, but are actually two ways of coming close to God. One way is to abstain from food and feel spiritual that way. But that's a little lower than the higher thing, which is to eat and enjoy and rejoice and then see God in that. That's hard. See, when you're scared for your life and when you're not eating, feel spiritual, pretty easy. Oh, please God, get me out of here, But when it comes to Purim, that's tricky, right? Because you're eating and singing and dancing and drinking. So when that's happening, can you see God in the goodness as well? That's a much harder job for us. Okay? So that's what he means by two halves of a whole. Good? Questions, thoughts, comments? Okay? Okay. So that's the Purim Yom Kippur connection. Jump to page 17, please. We're going to throw another element in here. It's a short class, but some important points over here. If you remember, at the end of the Megillah, we quoted a verse, I believe we did in this class, if not, I'll tell it to you. It says that Esther and Mordechai saved the Jewish people with their heroic acts, right? Probably the most heroic acts in Jewish history. And they survived, and all the Jewish people survived as well. And then they said they created this holiday called Purim. And they have to do various things. We saw last week, Mishloach Manot, gifts to the poor, Matanot Le'Avyonim, money to the poor, gifts to friends rather, money to the poor. We read the Megillah, we have a Suda, we add extra prayers in our tefillah. And then it says, V'kimlu kol hayodim, all the Jewish people accepted what was decreed. That means they accept upon themselves these mitzvot. Kimu v'kiblu. Stop there for 1 second. Let's jump back in history 3,328 years ago or so. And let's go back to the beginning of the Jewish people as a nation. Where do we begin as a nation? At Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is not the hospital on the Upper East Side. That's where actually many Jews started their personal lives, but that's not where we started as a nation. Okay? And it says something very, very interesting. Now, this is going to be a very fascinating discussion over here. It says in the book of Exodus, Shemot, 19:17, Yurchet Tesayim, the Jewish people stood at the foot of the mountain. Right? The Jewish people stood around the mountain at the foot of it. Now, the word tachtit actually means something else. It actually literally means underneath. So the commentators in the Gemara say, don't read this verse to say we stood at the foot of the mountain. Read the verse to say we stood under the mountain. Why would we stand under the mountain of Sinai? So the Gemara says the following: Amrav Avdimi Bar Chama Bar Chasa. This teaches you, Melamed, Shekafa Garash Baruch Alem et Ahar Kegigit. God held the mountain, as it were, over their heads like a big barrel. Va'amar Lahem, and God said to them, Imatem Mekabel Torah Mutav. If you accept upon yourselves the Torah, that's good. Vim love, but if not, Sham Tehek Vrotchem. There is going to be your burial place. You're all going to die. What is that Gemara saying? What did we just read? We're standing by the mountain. They're like, no, they didn't stand next to the mountain. They stood under it. Why? Because God suspended the mountain over their heads and says, you better accept the Torah. If you don't, I'm going to squash you all and you're all going to die. What would you say to that? Does that sound nice? Did we accept Judaism in a very willing fashion? Hello? No. Sounds like we had a proverbial gun to our heads. You've got to accept the truth. If you don't, I'm going to kill you all. That's not fair. Then, of course we're going to accept it. That's not exactly an acceptance of rejoicing and love, is it? Okay, hold on for a second. Let's finish off with a very famous Gemara. Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, he asked this question. Mikan mudar Rabba l'oraita. Here we have a really big contention and a great excuse, if you will, for the Jewish people to say, hey, we didn't accept it. You made us become Jewish. We didn't want it. You threatened us. So future generations like us can turn around and say, we don't want to be Jewish. We didn't accept this. We were forced into it. Our ancestors were forced into it. I'm not interested. I mean, many Jews say that anyway. But that's a very good excuse, no? Okay, so let's try to unpack this, and then we're going to throw Purim into it. Think for a second. Why do you think the Torah had to be given with a coercive element? Why does it have to be coercive? Why couldn't just God say, do you want the Torah? Yeah, thanks. Here you go. Why does the Gemara say, well, that wasn't enough? There had to be a coercive element that went with the Torah. What do you think? Let's say you ask me to do you a favor. Come every Wednesday and take care of something for you. And I do it for 1 week, and then 2 weeks, and I do it voluntarily. After 3 months, I decide not to come. What are you going to say to me?
Why aren't you coming?
I don't want to. What are you going to say?
Okay.
That's right. What are you going to do? Okay. I was volunteering from the first point. If I'm just volunteering for you, then you have no claim against me. It's nice that I'm volunteering, it's just that I want to do it. But the volunteering is not enough. We've got to get you to do it. Because I need you every Wednesday night. So the Torah couldn't have just been, it was partly voluntary. We said Nasa v'nishma, we're in. But being Jewish, it's not enough to be a voluntary thing. There has to be you got to do it. Because it's just voluntary. We could turn around and be like, I volunteered, and now I don't. So a part of being Jewish, whether we like it or not, it's an uncomfortable reality, is you got to do it. There's a responsibility. And if it's all voluntary, then you're going to opt out. But we can't have you opt out, because then there'll be no more Judaism. So the beginning of Judaism, when the Torah was given, it was done, taken voluntarily. Nasa v'nishma, we want in, we're interested. But as well as that, it's got to be a coercive element. But still, the coercion is still coercion. So the Gemara is still bothered by that, and then makes an incredible statement. And the Gemara says, Amar Rava, Afal Pikein, even though you're right, there was a coercive element, and that's not the best way to do it, because voluntary is much nicer, right? I want to help you. Hador kablu b'mechashverosh. In the days of Achashverosh, that's our Purim story, they accepted the Torah again. Dichtiv, as it says, Kimu v'kiblu. Those are the words in the Megillah. The Jews affirmed and accepted upon themselves. What? Well, we thought when we read the Megillah, it just means they accept upon themselves the mitzvah of Purim. The Gemara is saying, no. There's another layer. They affirmed and accepted that which they already accepted 1,000 years before at Mount Sinai. And what's that? The Torah. Okay, let's put this together. Hold on very carefully.
Wait, I'm sorry, which part of this is a quote from Esther?
Kimu v'kiblu. Those are the 2 words. Kimu v'kiblu. Okay. So it says, Hayudim. Kaimu mashkiblu kvar. They accepted on themselves. They accepted that which they already Mekabel Torah. That's what they accepted. They accepted the Torah. Okay, what is going on over here? Are you following? We've got to put this together. The Gemara says the Jewish people were forced to get in the Torah. We're like, okay, that makes sense. Okay, it can't just all be voluntary because then we're just going to give it up. But it's not fair. You can't be forced into it and expected to do it forever, because if it's all coercion, I'll be like, okay, I'm not interested anymore. And it can't just be voluntary either, because if you're just volunteering for something, eventually you'll volunteer out. But it was still coerced into it. Don't worry, says the Gemara. The Megillah hints at this and says what happened was, for years and years and years after Matan Torah, there was still that coercion thing, but something changed at Purim. There was a massive national feeling that changed. Why? What happened that started at Mount Sinai and then finished at Purim? They're like bookends. They're an arc that come together. Says Rashi, look at note 2, B'yimei Achashverosh, me'avat hanes shenasa lahem. In the days of Achashverosh, because Achashverosh threatened them, they were so grateful and they were so loving for the tremendous miracle that happened for them, they accepted the Torah. Why? You see, at Mount Sinai, it was a very scary experience. If you read the book of Exodus, chapter 20, there's thunder, there's lightning, the responsibility that comes with it. It was challenging. And we said that's important. It's important to have that aspect to your relation to Judaism. Right? You got to do it. Why? Because you got to do it. So when your kids do homework, the kids volunteer to do the homework, eventually after 2 weeks, or maybe one night, it ain't going to be done anymore. It's got to be, you've got to do it. You've got to go to school. I don't want to go to school. You've got to go. That's just the way it is. It's the same thing over here. But we can't just relate to our Judaism that way. Because then it's a fear relationship. And Mount Sinai was all about fear. But don't worry. About 1,000 years later, something happened to us in Persia, and that changed everything. The miracle of Purim was so big and was so impactful that it changed our people forever. So much so the Gemara says what started at Mount Sinai ended at Purim, and we accepted. We had to wait all that time. By the way, the 2 time periods of this giving the Torah and Purim story had a lot of amazing things happen between. I mean, we had King David, right? We had King Solomon build the first temple. King Solomon's reign was the greatest time in Jewish history, right? There were miracles left, right, and center. It was so good we didn't even accept converts. We were suspect of their motivations. That's how good it was to the Jewish people. So a lot of amazing stuff happened in between, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't until we got to Purim that suddenly we're like, oh, I love being Jewish. This is the best thing that's ever happened. And we changed as a nation. Entirely. We all changed. I'll give you a couple of examples. One not good and one good. I mean, they're both good examples, but one unpleasant one. You talk about pre-Holocaust, post-Holocaust. One event can happen, affect the majority of the Jewish people. Even if it doesn't affect them, we're a different nation. Right? Which is not the same. Pre-1948, post-1948. Before we get the state of Israel, after. Still the same people. Right? There were Jews in Israel for hundreds and thousands of years. But it's different. It's a different feeling towards it. We relate to Israel, relate to Jerusalem in 1967 in a different way. I'll give you 2 numbers. 9/11. Those numbers, 20 years ago, would have meant nothing to you. Well, one event can happen and it changes our whole mindset. Purim was our spiritual revelation at Mount Sinai, and it was forgiving the state of Israel and all good stuff. It completely changed us. So much so, they made a holiday out of it. We were so excited about this event. It was so clear to us that we were fulfilling our mission in this world that what started on Mount Sinai just carried on for hundreds of years, and then we got to Purim, and now I get it. Now I get it. So Shavuot is a celebration of the giving of the Torah, Mount Sinai, actually connects to Purim as well. It's not just Yom Kippur, where the sins are wiped away. It's also this as well. And that's why it says, look at the bottom of page 17, Kimu v'kiblu Yehudim alehem. The Alzar, the Jewish people accept upon themselves. The Al-Kol alehem, and all those who live with the Al-Yavolion Osim et Shnei Yamim Eileh, they accept upon themselves these 2 days. But what they really were accepting was the whole concept of Judaism, but with love rather than fear. And what's better? Is a fear relationship better or a love relationship? You say to your kids, clean up your room. If you don't, you're telling off, right? And hold back your dessert or you'll be in trouble. That's one thing. It's a job gets done. And sometimes you got to do that. You're going to do that. But you know what's better? You're like, can you do this for me? You know, Mum, I love you. I'm going to do it for you. That's better. It's not enough. You need to have the fear as well. You want to start with the fear, but the fear is only there to help you get to the love. Every relationship must have an element of fear. Not I'm scared, fear, but or maybe I am scared of doing the wrong thing. I mean, what's a chuppah? We're excited about the chuppah, but there's a fear element. Well, I'm scared of my spouse? No. There's an element of fear that I'm going to do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, and I'm going to ruin this whole thing. So first comes the fear, or maybe a better way is the awe, right? The awe of the inspiring event. That was Mount Sinai, right? It was a scary event, and then we get to Purim, which is just all love, and that's the order it's got to be. I do it because I have to do it, and eventually I love it. Hey, kids go to yeshiva, they have to do it, but then eventually you hope one point they're going to enjoy Torah learning and enjoy being Jewish as well. Right? When you're 12-year-old, I don't want to do it, you got to do it. I don't want to eat kosher, you got to eat kosher. Right? I want to eat pig, you can't eat pig. Right? Why not? Because I said so. Right? So it's a fear thing. Yeah, it starts as a fear thing, and that's the way it's got to be that way. But eventually, you hope it translates into enjoyment of love and love of Israel and all the rest of it. You hope, right? Because it ain't gonna last without that. If it's just fear, it's not gonna last. And if it's just love, it's just a combination of both. So Shavuot is fear, and Purim is love, and that's the completion of our relationship to God. And it took 1,000 years to get from one to the other. That's the incredible thing. That is the incredible thing. So much is this point drilled home to us. Turn over the page 18, that the Gaonim, these are the scholars who lived before the Rishonim, like in the 800s, 900s, says the days of Purim have a similar status as the day the Torah was given. The Torah given was a Torah thing. The Torah was given, like, that's the biggest day in Jewish history. It's like, you know what? Purim is just as good. They compare them. Okay. They compare them. Because at Sinai, we said Naaseh v'nishma. Naaseh v'nishma means I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to see what's inside it. That's how it started. Naaseh v'nishma, I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to find out what's inside it. But it wasn't. That means there was a certain limited degree of the acceptance of Torah. It was limited. It was held back a little bit. We accepted it, but there was something, lacking at that time. Okay? And it was a scary experience. We know the fire was there and all the rest of it, and there was cloud, and they heard God speak, and they were terrified. So there was a duress element to it.
Someone in the street and say hello. Very easy way to get stuff.
We get to the final part.
Right? So instead it's not for those people here. So I go outside.
Okay. Turn to page 20 and we'll finish with this. Bottom of the page. Some say actually that they accepted something else. The acceptance at Purim was something else. What was that? You see, at Mount Sinai, they accepted the written Torah. The written Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and all the 613 mitzvot, that's what they accepted. But you know what's given at the same time as the written Torah? An oral Torah. And that's an evolving reality, that we're always getting new information out. But in the oral Torah are all the laws. The Torah does not tell you how to keep Shabbat. The Torah does not tell you how to kill an animal. It does not tell you about all the forbidden unions, all the details of each one of them. Not everything is mentioned in Torah. In Torah, if you will, is like the headlines of a newspaper. Take the newspaper out, cut out all the headlines, right? Put it up in front of you, you just see that. Then you need to have commentary of what's going on. And so the Torah itself is just headlines. There's no laws in it per se. There's no reasons, maybe a couple of reasons here and there, some benefits, if you will. But the Talmud comes along and gives you all the details of all the laws. That's what the oral law does. That was also given, the principles were given at Mount Sinai and how to derive them. But the details come later because you have different situations. It's like the Constitution, and then you have to have lawyers and the Supreme Court decide how you apply the Constitution. Right? Some do it well, some don't do it so well. It's the same thing when it comes to Torah. The Torah itself is a book with information in, but then how do we interpret it? The oral Torah teaches us how to do that. You see, at Mount Sinai, they didn't buy into that second part so well. That part was lacking. The details, and that's where you know who is, right, in the details, that came later. When we got to Mount Sinai, we accepted upon ourselves the Torah. We got to Purim, we went full circle. We're like, you know what? Now we get it. The commentaries and the details and the laws, we're in. We're fully bought into it. Until that point, there was something missing. We got to Purim, we love this thing, and we're in for the details as well. So it took a long time. That's another opinion. They accepted upon themselves the written Torah and the principles, but the oral Torah was very, very difficult. It took a long time for us to really negotiate and accept upon ourselves all the details that come with being Jewish. Because when it comes to being Jewish, it's all in the details, right? I mean, it's like detailed up the wazoo. So that's where they waited. When Purim came, when the love relationship was there, and if you think about it, just think about any love relationship, what builds a love relationship between people? The details, right? When you think about any relationship we have, it's the small stuff. The small stuff breaks it, but the small stuff makes it. You don't argue in a marriage over, should we have invaded Iraq, should we not have invaded Iraq? You don't argue over that. Right? You don't see them in divorce proceedings. Yeah, she said yes to sanctions on North Korea. I said no, it's just not for us. Right? The big stuff is irrelevant. He didn't say good morning to me. He kept leaving his socks by the bed. Never used to wash this. It's all little small things. Relationships are built on details. It's all small. The stuff you would never believe you're going to argue over, you're going to argue over. You're like, why is that important? So I leave my socks by the side of the bed. Not like your uncle and aunt are lying over there. No, that's the big stuff. It's small little details of a relationship. That's in the negative, also in the positive. Small things, little favors you do to each other. Little nice things which no one wrote about that. No one told me about this. No one said I had to do these little tiny things. Right? The big stuff. You know, we buy a nice house. I don't know, whatever it is. Right? Then it's the small details. You say good morning to me. Just smile at me, right? You're happy when I'm small. You buy me this. Little small little touches that come with it. That's true in human relationships, and it's that way in relationships with God as well. There's big stuff, and there's little stuff. And the big stuff is big, but the little stuff is more important because that's where the relationship is made. That means the more details there are connected to a mitzvah, the better the chance of our relationship to being Jewish. It's frustrating. It's not so enjoyable. No one likes details. No one likes to be graded on the small little details that come with a relationship because they annoy you. I just want to, It's like the couple going to the rabbi. This is in my new book, actually. And she bursts out crying. He says, Rabbi, he never tells me he loves me. And the rabbi turns to the guy and says, is that true? He says, Rabbi, when I first met her, I told her I loved her. If anything changes, I'll let her know. I bet it is like your brother, yeah? It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. Because you've got to put the small little effort into it. If you will, Purim was the time that we were saved and we were able to put that little bit of effort into it. That's really what Purim was all about. That's all I really want to share with you today. It didn't take us that long. 30 or so minutes.
Can you explain where the coercion, duress ideas come? Like, are you getting that from text? Where is that coming from?
That is not my idea. That comes from the Talmud, and it's based upon the verse where it says the Jewish people stood at the foot of the mountain.
That's the only reason.
That's where it's hinted at in the Torah. Yes. Tach Zahav. The Gemara in Shabbat goes into it and says Tach doesn't mean at the foot of, it means underneath. And then they learn out that very famous idea that many commentators talk about. They were under a mountain. It doesn't mean literally a mountain. It means that we had to accept it, and there had to be a coercive element to our acceptance of the Torah.
Can you date this idea? Like, what era are we talking about here?
The Talmud?
I'm sorry, I should know this and I don't.
That's okay. No, you mean the Talmud? Sorry,
Yeah,
2,000 years ago. That's the Talmud 2,000 years ago, right? The Mishnah Talmud. However, it's quoting verses from the Torah.
Right.
So which means it's implicit in the Torah, not even in the Talmud.
Commentary.
It's 2,000 years ago. Yes. That's when the Talmud is written. I mean, it took 200 years, the Mishnah and then the Talmud eventually. You can do Rabbi Avi's Talmud theory class next semester if you want to, next week, 5 weeks. He'll give you more of the history of how it works. That's where it comes from. But they're saying it's implied in the Torah itself. Right? They're always, the way the Talmud works is it finds ideas in the written Torah and sees words or remazim, hints, implicit in the words itself. This is an example of how that works. In other words, it's in the Torah itself. He's got to find it. Just like we found Esther's name in the Torah. Right? It's all there. He's got to dig it around. Okay.